So you know those scenes where the hot tubs are filled with, like 12 adults who all have a drink in their hand and they've been in there for hours and nobody's getting out to go to the bathroom? Gross and gone. Thanks, Corona. It is Sunday, May 16th, 2021. On this week's edition of Sunday Sofatime, we're talking about everything you need to know to prepare for your upcoming cruise. Welcome back, everybody. Exciting things are happening in the world of cruising. Starting in just a couple days, people in the UK are gonna be able to cruise. Yeah! Now, I am not included in that group of people. I'm down here or over here in Germany. However, I have done 6 cruises during the COVID time of our lives, including one with MSC just a couple months ago on the MSC Grandiosa. The Grandiosa is very similar to the Virtuosa, which will be cruising from Southampton. And today I just wanted to go through sort of a list I made of things that you're gonna wanna know or need to know before your upcoming cruise, if it's with MSC or maybe some other line, as things are changing so quickly right now and more cruises will be starting up soon. I want to talk about things that you're going to need to know before the cruise, things that you can expect during the cruise, what you can expect then on the last day of the cruise. And if you are not interested in getting vaccinated and also are one of those people that really don't like to wear a mask even if you're supposed to, make sure you stick around to the end because I got a special tip for you. Before I get to the very first piece of advice or thing that you can expect, let me just say in advance or say it again. Things are changing very quickly and all the time at the moment. So by the time you watch this video, something might even already be different. So please keep that in mind when you're planning, or if you've been on a cruise and then you watch this video, you don't need to hit the comments and be like,
he said it was gonna be like this, but on our cruise it was different.
Like I said, I've done 6 cruises in the last year. The most recent one was just last month in April, but I cannot see into the future. I don't know how quickly things are gonna progress. The things that I'm talking about now are based on my 6 cruises within the last year up until this point in the middle of May. And the first one being, once you've booked your cruise, the online check-in is going to be absolutely necessary. It used to be that you could do some of it online or, not even really a lot of it online, and then the rest of the check-in process you could do at the port. Things like filling out your health questionnaire used to be something that you would do while you're in the cruise terminal, but it ain't like that nowadays. So once you've booked your cruise, make sure that you set up an account with the cruise line, whatever it is, if it's MSC, if it's TUI, very soon, Norwegian, Royal Caribbean are gonna be sailing again. They will send you the information of how to do it, and then do it. Usually you put in your reservation number and create a password, and then it will allow you access to several forms that you need to fill out before the cruise. And if you don't fill out these forms or don't fill them out correctly, they won't send you the documents you need to cruise. Do you understand now why this is so important? Another thing that should not surprise anybody, and this is also something that has changed so much even within the cruises I've done recently, is you are most likely going to have to provide a negative corona test. Yes, even if you're vaccinated at the moment, you still need to do the corona test. On one cruise I did, we were tested in the cruise terminal directly before the cruise. On other cruises I've done, we had to provide the test within 72 hours before leaving on the cruise, before flying to the cruise. And I think this is going to be one of those things that's going to be changing all the time, and just be sure that you read through the information from your cruise line or provided to you by your travel agent, because you definitely don't want to get that wrong. At the moment, the rules are still, if you cannot prove that you are not infected with the coronavirus, you're not going to be getting on the cruise. And that's fine with me. I don't want to be cruising with anybody who's infected with the coronavirus. So once you've done all your online check-in and you've put the printed tags on your bags, no expert cruiser would ever forget that. But 2 cruises ago, I forgot it. And at the moment, if your cruise is leaving from a different country than the one you're living in, it's very possible that you're going to have to apply for It's kind of like a health visa to be allowed into the country, and at the moment, you may have to apply for one to be allowed back into your country. For those of you who don't know, I'm living here in Germany now. Some of the cruises I've done have left from Germany, but many of them have left from other countries, including Italy and Spain, and I have had to fill out this online form. It's very similar to a visa to just register as somebody coming into the country, and as part of that form, you need to provide your negative corona test. So once again, I can just remind you to read through all the information you get from your cruise line and make sure that you understand what's required as far as tests and documentation before you leave. Okay, normally when you're on a cruise, the cruise lines will send you sort of a suggested time to show up at the port and board the ship, but nowadays those times are very strict. You will get a specific window of time to show up at the port, and it's not negotiable. This is one of the many ways that the cruise lines are making sure that we don't have to hang around in large groups of people and have unnecessary contact. And one huge advantage of this is, with the appointments all structured the way they are, getting onto the ship, almost every one of the 6 cruises I've done now has been so smooth and so quick. I've talked a lot about that in my recent videos about the advantages and disadvantages of cruising at the moment. And one huge advantage is just how quickly you get on the ship. So many cruise lines, including MSC at the moment, will give you some kind of wearable technology which will also help trace your movements on the ship. And this is being done in case it happens that somebody should test positive for the coronavirus while on the ship, and it has happened. By using this tracking technology, they'll be able to see who this person came in close contact with and know how many passengers from the ship will need to be put into quarantine at that moment and monitored for their health status, basically. It hasn't happened to one of the cruises that I have been on, as far as I know. However, a cruise after the cruise I was on, some of my viewers were on it and wrote to me that it happened. Somebody made it onto the ship and became positive for the coronavirus, and then I think it was 18 people were taken off the ship and put into quarantine. But there was no huge outbreak. Everything worked out fine. Let me just throw that out there. Okay, moving on to another thing that is a huge advantage as far as I'm concerned, and that is the muster drill or the safety drill. Usually, the safety drill is done in large groups and the entire ship closes down and everybody does it at the same time. It's a huge bummer on the first day of the cruise, but now you'll either be doing it in very small groups and it's sort of like you arrive and then they do it for you, or you'll simply need to verify or confirm that you've watched a special safety video on your cabin television. It's so much easier this way and it takes up so much less time. And honestly, this is one of the things that I hope stays like this forever. Next, I want to talk about a few things that are going to be different during the cruise, but before we do that, please forgive me for putting a little commercial break right here. Did it work? Was there a commercial right there? If there was, please let me know what it was about in the comments below. Okay, one thing that nobody should be surprised about is when you are navigating the public areas of the ship, at least at the way it is right now, you will be required to wear a mask covering your nose and mouth, and most likely, like homemade masks or fabric masks will not be allowed. On 5 of the 6 cruises I've done now, it has had to be a surgical mask. But one big advantage of that is the cruise lines, at least on all the cruises I've done, they have provided the passengers with masks in the cabin. There's a big pile of them waiting, and it's basically one mask for each day of the cruise. So that's a huge bonus. And if you're one of those people, like I said, who are like, well, I'm not gonna wear a mask if I'm outside, remember to stick around to the end because I've got a great tip for you. So let's say when you're leaving your cabin and going up to your table in the buffet, when you're going from the buffet to a lounger at the pool deck, those are the times that you're gonna have to be wearing a mask. As soon as you sit down someplace to enjoy your meal, to enjoy a drink, then you can remove your mask. If you're going to be watching a show in the theater, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, then you will be required to wear your mask the entire time. But you do not have to wear your mask when you're swimming. You do not have to wear your mask in the pool. I know that seems obvious to me, but these are questions that I've honestly been asked. The pools and hot tubs, at least on the cruises that I've been on, have been open. However, there are limited numbers of people allowed in these bodies of water. In the pools, I would say you don't really notice it that much. In the hot tubs, you definitely do, because usually it's only 2 people or 1 family allowed in the hot tub. So you know those scenes where the hot tubs are filled with, like 12 adults who all have a drink in their hand and they've been in there for hours and nobody's getting out to go to the bathroom? Gross and gone. Thanks, Corona. Another important thing to know is, at the moment, if you would like to leave the ship during the cruise, the only possibility is by booking an excursion. You cannot, in a port, just walk off the ship and do whatever you please. It's another way that the cruise lines keep track of who's coming in contact with who, and they are pretty strict about it. I've heard several stories now about people not being allowed back onto the ship because they left the excursion. And I think it probably won't be that long until these rules are relaxed as well, but at the moment, like I said, either just stay on the ship or you're gonna have to book some kind of excursion being offered by the ship. The shows and the entertainment on board are also something that's changed a lot over the last year. And so I can't tell you now if on your cruise you're gonna have big ensemble shows and musicals, or if you will have only guest artists, like solo singers, magicians, comedians, things like that. I've had both on my cruises in the last 6 months, and the only cruise line that at the time was offering the big musical production shows was actually MSC. So if you've got an MSC cruise coming up, you might be in luck. However, with the system as it is now, it's important that you reserve your seat for the shows in advance. You can use the ship's app. Usually you can do it over the interactive function in the television, or somebody at the front desk, I'm sure, can help you with that too. In order to keep up the social distancing, of course, not every seat in the theater will be filled. There's a limited capacity allowed in the theater, and you will most likely not be able to choose where you sit. When you arrive, crew members are there seating each group of people to make sure that the distancing is correct. Remember to get there a little bit early if you want to sit closer, and there may be less offerings than usual on your cruise. Another thing you're going to realize there's a lot less of is sort of like socializing on a Corona cruise. There are limitations to how many people from different families or different cabins can get together. Most likely there will not be big dance parties where people are, crowded on the dance floor or hanging out at the bar in the pub. And it's very likely that there will be no dancing happening at all. That doesn't mean you can't have a good time. It just means it's a little bit different. And if you're one of those people who likes to go on a cruise in order to meet a bunch of new people, you might want to wait a few more months until things relax even more, because at the moment, it's kind of hard to meet and get to know people under the current conditions. Okay, let's talk about one of the favorite things to do on a cruise, and that is, of course, eat food. I've got good news about the buffet. On 5 of the 6 cruises, the buffet was open and running like a buffet. The only difference was, instead of serving yourself, there's a crew member serving you. But it was still possible to walk up and down the stations and see all the different things and choose what it is you wanted to eat and how much of it you wanted to eat. And that is one of the things that I just love about cruising. On my most recent cruise on the AIDA Perla, AIDA is the German brand of Carnival. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the AIDA ships. They're the ones with the big kissy mouth on the front. AIDA usually is like a buffet lover's paradise because their ships have 3, 4, sometimes 5 different buffet restaurants. But at the moment, they're not serving it buffet style. They have the buffet divided into different plates, and then you can just order as many of these plates as you want. So your buffet may be crew service, it may be plate-based, but either way, you're still gonna get a lot of food, so don't worry about it. Specialty restaurants are also open also at a limited capacity to make sure that the tables are far enough apart, but there's also a limited amount of guests on board, so that's not really a problem. However, you really should reserve in advance to make sure that you can get into the specialty restaurant that you want to. And if you're going to be cruising with the Virtuosa coming up, make sure you try at least one specialty restaurant on the ship, because MSC has really upped their game as far as the specialty restaurants goes. All right, I've got one more quick thing to let you know about the last day of the cruise, and then I'll tell you about my special tip. Usually, the last day of the cruise is a huge bummer because sometimes at like 6:30 in the morning, they're trying to get you off the ship. How many times has the last day of the cruise been awful because you're still hungover or maybe even slightly drunk from the last night's celebration, and by like 8 o'clock you're already getting kicked off the ship? Well, the good news is it's not like that now. This is another thing where, in order to minimize the contact that you have with large groups of people, you will get a specific time where you are allowed to leave the ship, and you kind of have to stick with it. I mean, on one of my cruises, I think my time slot was 11:15. I was forced to stay on the ship until almost lunchtime. It wasn't awful. So make sure you know your flight times in advance. I mean, that's kind of obvious. You shouldn't be on the cruise and not know when your flight is leaving to go home. But based on the information you provide the cruise line, they will choose a proper like disembarkation window for you. And it might be later in the morning, which I think is a great thing. Okay, so I know that there are some people out there who are gonna refuse to be vaccinated, and at the moment, if you are planning one of the cruises, so on the North American side, you will be required to be vaccinated. And there's also people who are just against wearing masks, especially if it's outside. And I have a special tip for you if you're interested in cruising anyways, and that tip is don't. If you don't want to wear a mask on a cruise, then don't go on a cruise. But don't be that person who starts an argument in the theater about whether or not you should be wearing a mask or not during the cruise. If your cruise line is requiring passengers to wear masks on the ship, then either wear the mask on the ship or don't go. That's my special tip for you. And now comes the time on Sunday Sofatime where I comment on your comments live on air. In last week's Sunday Sofatime, I talked about my cruise on the AIDA Perla, a really interesting, fabulous ship actually, and I came up with a list of 5 things I loved about it, and these comments are on that video. And the first one is a double comment. It's actually a comment I got a lot of. It's from Get That Promo. Nice to see you rocking a Bondi Beach t-shirt. That's the hometown where I grew up. And then under that it says, me too, learn to swim there, from Sue Jones. I've never actually been to Bondi Beach. Is it Bondi or Bondi? Sorry that I don't know that. I didn't even realize that that was written on the shirt. It was just a shirt I bought that had a logo on it. And so I'm sorry, everybody. I've never been to Australia. I've never been to that beach, but maybe someday. Next comment is from Kathy Price. Kathy writes, why is everyone mentioning beach club? That was the secret word. Uh-oh. Got me to get TikTok. Now I'm hooked on Morgan's dance moves. Yes, I know I've mentioned it already, but I started a TikTok to sort of explore my singing and dancing creative side from my previous life as a musical actor. So if you're on TikTok and you want to see that, it's The Musical Morgan. Thanks for coming over, Kathy. Final comment is from Rob V. Rob writes, I absolutely loved this video. The beach club is amazing. Just the idea of feeling like you're outside without having to be outside sounds great. So excited for the upcoming videos. Yeah, there's a lot more videos coming from that ship and that cruise. So I'm looking forward to getting them to you too. And as I mentioned, this sort of indoor dome over the pool or this beach club area is something that on my first impression I wasn't really into, but by the end of the cruise I also thought it was really cool, especially at night. Like Rob was saying, it feels like you're outside, but you're actually inside. And so even if the weather's not so nice, you still have that sort of pool, beach club atmosphere, and that just makes it a really great space. If you haven't seen what that looks like yet, then just look at some of my most recent videos. You'll see a lot of it. And thanks for hanging out with me this Sunday afternoon. If you are one of the people who have one of the Virtuosa cruises coming up, please let me know in the comments below if you're going to be doing that, what you're looking forward to, if I maybe helped you answer some questions. And I hope to see you here again soon. Bye-bye.